Hi, welcome to Property Mythbusters, where we debunk myths surrounding property investing. I'm Ken from Avvora Finance.
I'm Debra from the Property Frontline.
And I'm Gilmovich from Real Property Manager. Now we've got a great topic and as well to talk about today, and that is debunking the myth of whether it's risky to invest in a COVID-19 property affected market. So there's a lot to talk about, and we've got limited time, but we're going to give you some really good stuff. And we're going to start off with talking to Ken in regards to the risks going in from a finance perspective. So what does that look like for property investors, Ken, when they're putting in their applications for a loan?
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment there has been a lot of changes within the credit policy from lenders, and they basically, previously was a focus around expenses, living expenses. Now it's more focused on income. So the lenders are really wanting to make sure, if you're self-employed, last time 2-year tax returns was more than enough to substantiate your income, but what they're wanting, supporting information, and this could include like a latest BAS statements, just to make sure that the income hasn't slowed down. And anyone who's, bonuses, casual employment, any other types of commissions, sometimes they're reducing the amount that they'll take into consideration during the loan. So there's been a lot of changes and primarily focused around income because there's a lot of uncertainty there. So from the lender's perspective, I guess they're managing their risk from that perspective, but they are still lending, I guess, and that's the most important thing. There hasn't been any, apart from those particular items, there hasn't been any other significant changes. There's been additional questions just regarding if you're anticipating any changes due to the pandemic. But the guys who are probably working in the certain industries that are heavily impacted by COVID-19, such as retail, tourism, the airline industry, they are, some lenders won't include that income. Same with like casual income. Some aren't including casual income as a standalone. It needs to be supported by an applicant who has full-time employment. So one of the things, I guess, to kind of think about when there's a lot of uncertainty and just to kind of manage the amount of risk is to kind of consider whether you do want to go fixed or variable. This helps with forecasting. So, fixed rates are generally more competitive than the variable options at the moment. Although I do tend not to skew towards pricing for the reason to choose whether fixed or variable. But it does give you better certainty and ability to forecast better because your expenses are locked in. Whereas if you were on a variable interest rate, you kind of, if you're doing it based on pricing and expenses, you're kind of, hoping that the interest rates do decrease. Whether they do, don't, or stay the same, the time will tell in that particular case. But the fixed rates, are there as an option to kind of lock down your expenses, and then you're, leaving your income as a question. But yeah, that is something to do for forecasting purposes. Maybe you could be, if you've lost your job, there's probably not too much that you can do, but maybe if you've been stood down and temporarily reduced hours, but you will resume at some point in time, just to help manage and get peace of mind, I guess, for fixing. That is all some item to consider when deciding which way. There's a whole bunch of other items, but I won't go into it. But yeah, in terms of property investing contingency plans, I guess, how do you have enough funds to kind of cover the property if it's untenanted? I'll leave that one to you, John, and what can be done there.
Yes, we'll have a chat about that.
Yeah, the fundamentals still kind of play out. Make sure that you've got the deposit that you need to make the purchase. A lower LVR is going to look a lot more stronger. Supply credit isn't an issue at the moment. So, if you've got all your ducks lined up, you're still able to kind of go out there and purchase an investment property. Whether you should or shouldn't, but the rental market's like, I'll leave that to Deb and I'll leave it to you and Deb and John to kind of explain that a little bit more. But from the credit side,
sounds like the banks are not running out of money at this point in time.
No, they certainly are not. They certainly are.
Yeah.
So that's
okay,
it.
thanks, Ken, for that.
No worries.
So yeah, let's have a look at on the rent side of things. So probably one of the most significant things that has happened during this COVID environment is the rollout of the COVID-19 tenancy laws, which have gone national. Going into a property in right now, if you are setting during what is been a 6-month moratorium on evictions. As an investor, as a landlord, you can be mindful and understand those particular laws. They can be very, very confusing. And you must understand, because there is some risk there, but the risk can be dampened if you can navigate your way through it, and you can, and you definitely can. So I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of the laws themselves. You can find more information on that front from the Office of Fair Trading websites now. There's plenty of information. It's actually really good information and downloads and what do you call it? Cheat sheets, if you like, with all that information on it. But do understand them. Probably the other thing at the moment in the COVID environment is we have seen vacancy rates move up in an up direction. So stock is readily available because some tenants are opting to move. Some of them have lost their jobs. They're downsizing. They're moving back home with their parents to save money because of the financial strain. So we're starting to see some early indications that vacancy rates are moving up a little bit. And we'll know more of that in the next 4 to 6 weeks with some data. But at the moment, the early indicators are, yes, there is quite a bit of stock on the market, and that stock is getting competitive if it's generic. So strata apartments, for example, competing with each other, like products tend to get hit the hardest. And we have seen rents already drop by some 10% already. So keep in mind that you need that buffer. You must understand your buffer potentially. So whatever you were quoted pre-purchase on the rental value, that may not be the cash flow that you may be getting right now, or if you are settling on the property without a tenant and you need to go to market and market that property. So be mindful of that. And the other thing is understand that right now your ability to get landlord insurance is extremely difficult to almost no availability of product, because most of the insurance providers have put embargoes on landlord insurance policies at the moment. So they're really, really hard to get. But some products are still out there, but it's actually difficult to find. It's getting smaller by the day as far as your risk there. So very important, if you cannot get a policy, you're carrying the risk. That means that you have to be super, super diligent with the type of tenant that you choose to go into a property. Okay, there is going to be applications out there that potentially are high risk applications, if you like, and you need to be very, very wary. And just as much as our job and our role as property managers to accept tenants, our role is also to decline applications that we think are going to potentially have cash flow issues. So you have to be super diligent and ask the hard questions of their employer, whether they may be possibly in a stand down situation with their employment, and if that happens, is there a safety net that's going to be available to keep them going on that front. So application and tenant selection, absolutely crucial right now that you do the due diligence on that front. and turn every rock under the sun to get the information that you need to make sure that yes, they're in a job that's potentially safe for the next 3 to 6 months, and if it's not, what is the fallback position with either their savings or through the JobKeeper scheme or other schemes that are currently being rolled out. So you can mitigate your risk on that front, but you've got to do your homework.
And it still comes down to fundamentals though, doesn't it?
Yep. So back to the fundamentals as far as I mean, you'll talk about that in a sec, but the type of property, the quality of property, the rent that you price it at, very important, because you want to try and mitigate your vacancy at the moment. So pricing is absolutely crucial as well. It's not a time to reach for figures that are in the sky, high in the sky.
And even taking it from a property management perspective, this current environment really highlights that you need professionals to manage your situation, and you still come down to really good quality, like best practice property management. Keep your documentation, keep your communication open. People are still have still got to keep their properties well maintained and do your inspections. So I guess that's what I was saying about like the real fundamentals come to the fore, don't they?
Yeah, so quality property management is absolutely key, and that's in itself an insurance policy right there, because it is a tougher environment to navigate now for property managers, and the ones that are low skilled are going to struggle, and the ones that are high skilled, well established, know what they're doing, up to date with all the legislation and processes, are the ones that can manage, if the challenging times and the risk for you as the property investor, and mitigate that risk for you. So absolutely crucial to get quality property management.
Yep. Okay. Is it me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'd love to hear from you, Deborah.
What's happening in the property space?
Yeah, well, but I think that's a nice segue, because I think the real theme of what we're dealing with in, is it risky to invest in this environment? It really comes down to still sticking to the fundamentals, as we've been saying the whole way through. And so you really need skilled professionals, experienced people to maximise your position. And, so when you're selecting a property or even reviewing your portfolio and trying to decide what to do, you really should do that with someone who's skilled and has a good track record of experience that they can demonstrate. In like moving into like the buying or optimization space. So what do you do with your property in this kind of environment? I'd start with, if you have got a little bit more time because you are working from home or, even reduced hours, take the time to review your situation. We all hate the paperwork, but now's a really good time to get all that together and either prepare for, in the next few weeks when it might be time to buy, or, assess your situation and map out what you would really like to do. From the market perspective, where I know it's very, very bad times, but the auction rates are just historic. So we've never seen recorded auction rates this low. And so at a higher level last weekend, Sydney 28%, Melbourne 27%, Brisbane 12%. We don't have stats on the Northern Territory, Tasmania or WA, because I use SQM's data. But then, so Canberra 50%, Adelaide 12%. But the thing to think about with those stats is that's on very reduced numbers. So we're probably only seeing around about 25% of the properties that we would normally see being auctioned, now currently still continuing to auction. So listings have dropped, but what's actually happening with managing the sales is agents have really pivoted very quickly, and now they're no longer using auctions as their main sales flow. So a lot of property is not being listed on the main portals, and if you're considering buying, because we know people who are in a good financial position are aware that there might be some bargains out there. If you're really ready to go, then make sure you keep in contact with your local agents and be clear that you say to them that you're an approved buyer and you're ready to go, and they'll move you right up the list because they don't want to waste time in this current environment. They're not dealing with tire kickers or trying to persuade people. In their mind, you're either a buyer or you're not, and that's fine. They'll always maintain their relationship with you, but you know, nobody's pulling any punches in this environment.
So you're saying agents are pre-qualifying buyers before they actually spend any time with them or even take them through the properties. They really want to know, are you in a position to make a purchase should you actually like this property?
Yep, that's right.
Just to compliment it, I guess I'm also seeing, like with some of the clients that I'm talking with, they're very decisive in terms of what they're going to do. They're either going to delay their plans until everything kind of resumes back to normal, or they're dead keen while the market's doing what it's doing to just jump in and secure properties. That's interesting. That's how it's playing out.
Yeah, and interesting that everybody's seeing buyers and vendors reacting the same way. Yeah, it's very consistent. Yeah.
Debra, on a final note,
I've got a couple more points, but yeah, go on.
Can I just ask you, given the current distressed environment, are you getting those calls from purchasers about distressed sales or bargains, if you like? I mean, is that a realistic approach at the moment? With the expectations that
buyers are making contact, looking for bargains, expecting bargains.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing, we might see like about 5%, 5 to 10%, where there might be a little bit more flexibility with the pricing. We're not seeing massive drops because the banks have stepped in to say that people, can have these, payment, not holidays, but deferments. And also the government has ensured a lot of people's income. So we're not seeing the distressed sales that might be hyped by some of the unscrupulous property operatives. So the vendors aren't being pushed too hard. And of course now, where we're at, like this is the 23rd of April. Last week we might have had a little bit more uncertainty, so vendors were a little bit more open to take a little bit more of a bargain. But now that we can really see Australia coming out the other side pretty quickly, vendors are like, no, that's my price. I'm going to hold. So on the supply side, we will now start to see properties that come onto the market from vendors who knew what the environment was. Up until last weekend, we were still sort of clearing up sales for people who had put their their property on the market before the lockdown kind of occurred, but now we're still seeing properties come on the market knowing that there's not as much stock, and so they've got a bit of an opportunity to I guess, negotiate a little bit more positively or with strength. So from the vendor side, they're thinking, right, well, my property's pretty good. There's not much stock. I'm putting it on now, and I'm going to get it sold before like a big, a big.
Oh, the one that got away.
Yeah, like there could be a big,
Welcome to home office.
Yeah, working from home.
Work from home.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are expecting that there will be quite a few properties held off until it's over. So if you are thinking of selling, it's not a bad time, depending on the type of property you've got. And then, so that's the supply side. On the demand side, yeah, we are seeing lots of people who are ready to go, and a lot of first-time buyers who were thinking about buying a little bit further out, and now they're like, oh, could I actually get closer in to the city, or get something a little bit more appealing? And so to buy or not to buy, it really still comes down to, are you ready? Is the time right for you? Put the market aside and, assess your own situation. Look at your budget. Don't go over your budget, and be proactive in sticking to buying what you want. So don't buy some crazy 3-bedroom off the plan thing, because it's going to be horrible if you really needed a house. And be very careful about buying a really rough bargain. So, something on a stupidly busy road that will never achieve a good price. But I guess that's it for us. We have gone over time as usual.
Can I just add one quick thing, because I did forget about the, so I was talking mainly about purchases, but refinancing, with a lot of changes that's happening and things like that, from a defensive point of view, if you've already got investment properties and your circumstances haven't changed and you haven't reviewed your loan in a while, go ahead out there and just review your loan, especially if you haven't done it in a 2-3 year time period. Interest rates have moved significantly since then, and if you're looking to free up some capital, some cash flow, and reduce your repayments, that's certainly something that I would encourage people to do, because once your circumstances change, you've been stood down and your hours have been reflected and changed, you might end up just staying with the lender that you've got at a higher rate. So that's always something that you can do to also help manage and mitigate the risk, or manage that risk by just doing it now as opposed to waiting later. If your situations become impacted.
But a lot of people haven't had their income impacted, and it's time for them to review their situation, because they could put themselves or position themselves for a purchase in the not too distant future, where they could make some good strategic purchases.
Make a move.
But yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
So wrapping up, that's it from us. Thanks so much for watching. If you do have any further questions, you can contact us at our respective websites. So avvora.com.au, realpropertymanager.com.au, or thepropertyfrontline.com.au. And if you have any...
See you.
Bye.
For the next session. Yeah, looking forward to it.